I'm going to spend the next few minutes walking through the Studiologic Numa X Piano GTSE the way I would if I were standing in a rehearsal studio with it in front of me. My goal isn't to hype a product, it's to help you decide whether this particular stage piano actually fits the way you play, the gigs you book, and the budget you've set. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about the hesitation most of us feel before dropping money on a new keyboard. The digital piano market is crowded, and a lot of the options you see advertised promise authentic feel and studio-grade sounds without really showing how those promises translate into day-to-day use. You've probably tried a few budget models that feel cheap under your fingers, or you've heard demos that sound great but leave you wondering if the instrument can survive the rigors of a touring schedule. Those are the two biggest risks: buying something that feels wrong when you actually play, or ending up with a piece of gear that looks impressive on the shelf but can't hold up under repeated transport. That's why I focused my research on three things: the key action, the sound engine's flexibility in a live environment, and how the unit integrates with the rest of a typical gig rig. I dug through the technical sheets, watched a handful of live performance videos, and read through the community forums where musicians discuss what works and what doesn't. What emerged was a picture of a keyboard that tries to bridge the gap between a high-end studio piano and a road-ready stage instrument. The first thing you notice when you sit down at the Numa X is the wooden hammer action. The keys are fully weighted, and the wood-cap tops give a subtle, natural resistance that mimics an acoustic piano more closely than the plastic-capped actions you find on many mid-range keyboards. In practice, that means the transition from a real piano to this digital model is smoother, especially for players who spend a lot of time in classical repertoire or need that tactile feedback for nuanced dynamics. For a gig musician who switches between a grand piano and a synth mid-set, having that consistent feel can reduce the mental friction of adjusting your technique on the fly. Now, the sound engine Studiologic calls it a multi-engine system, and it really shows its strength when you start layering or splitting sounds. The acoustic piano patches are surprisingly detailed. You can hear the resonance tail that usually gets lost on cheaper models. On top of that, there are electric piano, organ, and a few synth voices baked right in, all accessible without having to dig through endless menus. In a live situation I tested, I could set up a classic piano plustering layer for a ballad, then switch to a bright electric piano split across the upper half for a funk groove, all with a single foot switch. That kind of on-the-fly flexibility is where the Numa X starts to earn its price tag. One of the biggest practical strengths is the built-in USB audio interface. It's not just a MIDI port, you can send a stereo line-level signal straight to your laptop or iPad. That eliminates the need for a separate audio interface when you're recording a rehearsal or streaming a live set. I ran a quick test with a DAW open, recorded the piano's output, and the latency was negligible, well under the 10 milliseconds threshold that most players start to notice. For a home studio musician who wants a single piece of gear that can both perform and record, that integration is a genuine time saver. On the flip side, there are some trade-offs that become clear once you start using the instrument in a real gig environment. The chassis, while sleek, is constructed from a lightweight alloy that feels solid on a desk but can be a little too flimsy when you're loading it into a flight case. The design is meant for portability, which is great for a touring pianist, but the lack of a built-in hard case means you'll need to invest in external protection if you're moving it frequently. In my own setup, I added a padded gig bag, and that added a few dollars to the total cost. Another point to consider is the screen. It's a modest LCD that shows parameters, but it's not a full-color display, and navigating deep menus can be a bit fiddly in low-light conditions. In a dark club, you might find yourself squinting to confirm a split point or a layer level. That's not a deal-breaker, but it does mean you'll want to set up your patches beforehand and rely on memory or a quick cheat sheet during a performance. Who should buy this piano? If you're a gigging pianist who needs a realistic key feel and wants the ability to layer acoustic and electric sounds without pulling out a laptop, the Numa X hits the sweet spot. It's also a solid choice for a home studio setup where you want a single device that can record directly to your DAW, especially if you already have a modest monitoring system and don't want